microphone off as well, please. Okay, apologies for accidents.
We've received no apologies this morning.
Okay.
Can I do a quick roll call as well?
Yes,
Chair?
please.
Thank you.
Yes, please.
I'll start with the councillors, please. Councillor Jeff Jones.
Yep, I'm here.
Councillor Peter Black.
Present.
Councillor Philip Downing.
Present.
Councillor Wendy Fitzgerald.
I'm present, more or less.
Thank you. Councillor Steve Gallagher.
Present.
Councillor David Helliwell.
Present.
Councillor Terry Hennigan. Councillor Chris Holly. Councillor Paxton Hood-Williams.
Present.
Councillor Linda James.
Present.
Councillor Mary Jones.
Mary's having difficulty coming in. I think she's had to speak to IT. So hopefully we'll join later now.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Peter Jones.
Present, Emily.
Councillor Susan Jones.
Present.
Councillor Rob Stewart. Councillor Will Thomas.
Yeah, present.
Councillor Mike White.
Present.
Councillor Robert Francis Davis. And the invited officers today, Phil Holmes. Hugh Mowbray.
Present.
Ben Smith. Claire James. Vicky Thompson. And Liz Jordan. Is there anyone I've not called here today? And Martin Nichols. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Emily. Right, moving on. Any disclosures of personal or prejudicial interests? Paxton, you got your hand up? Paxton?
Sorry. Can I declare personal interest in terms of item 7, please, as a member of the Rural Development Programme Local Action Group?
Okay, thanks. You can take your hand down now. Right, okay. Right, prohibition of whipped votes and declaration of party whips. You got your hand up again?
No, sorry.
Right, okay. Right, item 4, right, the minutes of the previous meetings. First of all, for accuracy. Okay. Right, and any actions or any points anybody wants to actually bring up here on the minutes of the 3rd of November. Page 1. Page 2. Page 3. Page 4.
Chairman, I had my hand up.
Oh, sorry, Chris. My apologies. Right. What page is it? Sorry.
On page 2.
2, right.
Swansea Central Phase 1. It's the first item about the cases of COVID-19 on the arena site. Can we have some feedback on what's happening there? Because considering the position this country is currently in with no COVID-19, and we know that many of the people working on the site aren't resident in Swansea, probably staying down here somewhere. Can we have some feedback on this? Because I have to say this, you know, when we have been told by the government what we are being told, I think we need to be sure that we are safeguarding our own population, and I think we need some serious feedback on this. I have other questions on the minutes as well. So can I do them first and then?
Yes, please.
Okay, on strategic sites, which is on page 4. the concerns raised over the Skyline project. Can I have an update on that? Considering that there is now one being built in Herwine on the Mountain Colliery site, which are already selling tickets, and those tickets are available and reported on the BBC website and on the news that it's to be opened in March. That must be a real concern that if that was up and running, and it's projected the same sort of conditions that it's had in North Wales and how well the project's doing in North Wales, I think we need to have more concern about this and ask for more information regarding it. I know the leader was in the Evening Post saying how well the site it's being developed, but there must be a concern when we have one being built and in operation by the middle of this year, which is only 30 miles away. And the adverts that we are seeing for this Skyline this project up in Herwine is pointing out the fact that Swansea is only 20 minutes away on the bypasses. So there must be a real concern over that. And the other thing is, on Castle Square, is it possible that we have, maybe not today, but a further update on where we are with this, because it seems to have been going on an awful long time when we did appoint someone to be the strategic manager for that site and the development manager. So it's just a question of if we can have reports back, not necessarily today, but over the next couple of weeks. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thanks. Does anybody want to, Hugh, do you want to comment at all? Or I must admit, I was not aware that they were building when they had wine, you know, so...
I think the leader's indicating first. I'm not sure if he wants to...
Yeah. Leader, do you want to say anything?
Thank you, Chair. I'll take the last few comments from Councillor Holly, if that's okay. And I only caught the end of the workers on site at the arena comment, so I won't comment on that. I'll leave that to Mr. Mowbray. In terms of Skyline, look, let's remember that this is a international investment into Swansea by a multinational company based in New Zealand. It is their proposal. They have continued through the COVID lockdown to work up their final business plan and business plan submission with Welsh Government. Welsh Government remain positive about a co-investment opportunity in this site. We've got to remember this is not just a zip line facility. The majority of the attraction in Swansea would be luges, which is Skyline's core business. And the progress on that continues to be significant, and we're very confident. We're in regular contact with Skyline representatives about that investment. This is not a council investment in the site, so let's be clear. But I think, you know, our approach to this has probably differed significantly from Councillor Holly's administration's approach, and I think that was borne out in the comments today. Our view about attractions and about tourism. Let me just finish the point, if I could.
Sorry, Chair. If the leader wants to have a political comment, that's fine. But we'll do that in that context. This is a scrutiny board, and I asked a question on it. Now, if he wants to have a go politically, that's fine. But he'll have to let me come back and say something. I'm asking a question about the feasibility in a scrutiny panel. If you want to make a political comment, leader, that's fine. But he'll allow me to do the same. It's a simple question about it, because within 20 minutes drive we're having a development, and it's just a simple question. If you need to have political comments, fine, let me do the same.
Yeah, hang on a minute, leader. You know, we try to keep politics out of this. It is scrutiny, and I think it was perhaps a fair request from Chris Holly. I must admit, I was not aware that they were building one in Herwine, and you know, I think there could be consequences on the arena. We need to know these.
Chair, if I may finish my comment, because I know Councillor Holly jumped in there, but if he'd have let me finish, I think he'll realise it's not a political comment. What I'm emphasising is a difference in approach here around the fact that if we are to stimulate the economy in the area, we're doing that through a number of avenues, one of which is stimulating the tourism and visitor economy in Wales. Part of it is about the arena, bringing 220 plus events a year to Swansea, 3,500 people enjoying shows in the arena 220 times a year. We have a £400 million economy in Swansea. We need to bring more attractions to not just the city, but to the region. And one of the things that both Welsh Government and Skyline have been very keen to see is a clustering of attractions. So actually, believing that just because you've got something up the road that people could go to, it isn't a negative for delivering something in this area. In fact, what we've got to realise, and this is what the point I was trying to make about the difference in approach here, it's about seeing ourselves as part of a bigger, wider offering for our region, because we are competing with people who may choose to holiday in other parts of the UK or abroad. And what we're saying is actually, we want to give you as many reasons as possible, not just to visit Swansea, but to visit the region. So clustering of attractions is a positive thing. And having people being able to do lots of different things when they come to an area is a positive thing. And that's borne out in terms of the information that we've been collating, that Skyline have been collating. And that's one of the things Skyline pushed us on is, okay, if we bring our attraction to Swansea, what else is in the area that people would choose to do when they visit? Because if people come to vacation, they'll do not just for one thing, but for many things. So it's part of that wider strategy. And again, it's just a difference in approach here, which is to say, just because something exists 20 miles away doesn't necessarily mean that you can't do something in your area. In fact, it improves your ability to do that. The more you do, the more you're able to do. And I think, continuing that positive approach to investment is really important.
Okay,
Chair, do you want me to, I can come back on Castle Square, but I know a couple of other hands have gone up. So do you want to deal with the Skyline bit first and perhaps come back to me on Castle Square?
Well, did you bring that up, Chris, Castle Square, or Chris?
Yeah, I believe Councillor Holly did ask for an update on Castle Square.
Right, okay. Right, if you come back. Right, Robert, Francis Davis, do you want to say anything? If you can keep it short as well, please. We're only really on the letters, this particular part. Robert? Okay, we'll move on to Hugh Mowbray then. Hugh, you want to say anything?
I just wanted to agree with the leader, to be honest. I think we've Skyline are very aware of what's going on around them in terms of other issues, and they see it as a positive in terms of clustering, exactly as the leader said, and having more positive amount of these types of brings more people into the area. Just look at Pembrokeshire and what they've got in terms of Oakwood, Heatherton, Folly Farm, all of these different things, and they all contribute to each other, and they all exist together because they actually work together in terms of you go to one day, you go to another day when you're on holiday. So I think it is a positive, and as the leader says, the financial discussions with the Welsh Government are getting to an advanced stage. So that just demonstrates as well that Skyline are still significantly interested and don't see the Zip world, which is different, as a competitor. They see it as a positive.
Okay, right. Robert, do you want to come in now? Are you here, or Hugh, your hand is still up?
Sorry.
Sorry, we go back to the leader then.
I think Councillor Francis Davies is having problems with his mic by the look of it, but Chair, yeah, just on Castle Square, I'm sure the officers will cover it in more detail later, but just to report positive progress on the Castle Square development. As you know, we've quite rightly, Councillor Holly said, we've appointed a development manager. We've now got to the point of getting to a detailed design part where we're able to shortly, hopefully, release the revised proposals for Castle Square, and then Cabinet will be asked to make the decision in terms of investment for that. But I think people will be really impressed with what's proposed for the new Castle Square. It's a reimagining, bringing back some of the charm of the old Castle Gardens, but together with a modern welcoming space for people to enjoy a wonderful place in our city centre. So really good progress on that, and the new designs for Castle Square will be released in due course.
Okay, thanks. Robert, are you able to speak now, or?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Right, I had the problem. If I may go back to the Skyline, just to confirm that Skyline want to see a clustering of attractions in a destination. If people have been to Florida, people don't say you, because Disneyland is there, you don't have Great Neck Universal or Epcot or others, because that's what makes it popular. People go there and stay for a period of time. And one thing that Skyline was concerned that there wasn't enough of a cluster. And if it's 20, Irvine is 20 miles, you say it's going to up the road, well, it's only 20 miles down the road as well to Swansea, and Swansea with the vista, with the bay, I think has got a huge amount to offer. So it is not a negativity, which has seemed to come across the question. Whether it was intended that way, you know, it may not have been, but it sounded that way. And that I see it as a positive to have more attractions there in Swansea. And one of the things they asked from the Policy Development Committee, we're looking at how do we make the destination stronger at the Harvard there, at the Morvis destination, using the river corridor. And so therefore, I think it will be extremely important to have more of an offer in Swansea, not just the one offer.
Okay, thanks for that. Before Chris wants to speak again, before well, I thought
it's forget it, because if people think that scrutiny is being negative, there's nothing I can do about that.
No,
I'm just asking questions, and it seems as if you know that it's always going to be a negative when you asking scrutiny. It's not that. It's a concern about the future of our city, and if that is coming across as negative, I'm sorry that's the case. You know, but we are here to ask questions.
Yeah, I've got to say, I didn't see it as a negative. I think Chris was actually relating, or in my mind anyway, with regards to economies of scale. You know, if you've got the same sort of offer in one part as somewhere reasonably close, it could affect both offers at the end of the day. You know, economies of scale. Anyway, there was one part on the reply that I actually had to the letter that actually came out, you know, in the minutes as well. It was the pie chart with regards to Swansea Central, the employment of people on site. On the pie chart, it actually said bid promise to target at least 70% of local labour. But I've read it somewhere. I can't seem to find it now. But what they seem to be classing in A and B is labour from all of Wales. Now, I wouldn't call Wales local and so on. So what is the actual figure relating to local people employed on site? Perhaps I'm misreading the pie chart or whatever, but it doesn't seem to be very clear to me. Can we clarify that and perhaps come back on it?
I will clarify it and come back to you, but these are the standard bands which are used for assessing the labour force, basically, but I will come back with an answer. Yeah,
okay, thanks for that. Right, if we move on then, please. A second. Right, to the agenda. The project update on the dashboard cover. I know we've covered some of the items actually in the dashboard at the present time. And thanks again for the overview at the start, you know, with all the little symbols. I didn't see it as useful in the original meeting, but I see it as quite useful now with regards to completion dates and targets and so on. if we can move on to...
Sorry, Chair, before we move on, we didn't address Chris's issue in terms of the COVID aspects on the site, which just to very quickly to report it, COVID is becoming a serious issue. There are aspects. The contractor Buckingham takes this very seriously. They've split the teams into different sections. So if one team goes down with COVID, there is still people on site, and they are looking to protect their workforce as much as they can in that respect. And obviously, people work together in pods. If they're in a pod together, they would live together as well. So it is in terms of trying to protect the local area and making sure that sort of the site does continue. Buckingham are complying with all legislation in terms of government COVID legislation, and they are going above and beyond, to be honest with you, to try and make sure the project can continue, and their workforce are. And the locality is protected in the best way it can. But the new variant of COVID is obviously becoming sort of a bigger issue in terms of transmission, and they are looking to sort of put in place as much protection as they can to make sure that the workforce and locality is not affected.
Okay, I'm grateful for that. And I think it links to, my question with regards to where the workforce is actually, where they actually come from. I know it was actually raised in our last meeting. I think you actually said that if there are any symptoms, they're actually sent home. Well, if the majority of workforce are from a long way away, I was just wondering how the main contractor actually managed to keep the workforce established. Anyway, right, we move on to Mike White. Do you want to say anything? Mike, you got your hand up? Okay. Right.
Yes, Chair. Yeah, Chair.
Yeah.
Right. I believe Terry Hennigan had his hand up before I did, but
I know, but he's taken his hand down now for some reason.
All right, Chair. Right. In regards to the Swansea Phase 1 regeneration, the projects, could I ask, have we received any further funding for the city deal projects?
Yeah, hang on a minute, Mike. I think we move it into that agenda item now, with regards to, phase 1 and so on. So perhaps if we can bring that up there, otherwise we'll never move, we'll move on to the agenda.
Oh, I think we've gone on to the dashboard report, Chair, sorry.
Yeah, well, we will move on to the dashboard report. I was giving you an opportunity to actually speak on the last lot of points that were actually raised. Right, okay, if we're on to the phase 1, then I think it's page 10. Right, do you want to ask the question again, Mike?
Yes, what I'd like to ask, Chair, if possible, have we received any further funding for the projects for the city deal? Of the funding of both governments?
Hugh, do you want to answer, or Rob? Sorry.
Yeah, Chair, I'm happy to answer that. We're due to say a little bit about this on Thursday at the Joint Committee, but yes, we've been successful in receiving a further £18 million as a city region from the two governments, and we are anticipating a further £18 million before the end of this financial year.
Okay.
Wonderful news.
And I must admit, I was going to ask that question myself, further down the line. So out of the 18 million, we get 1.5 million, I think, that actually comes to Swansea. We've not had a regional scrutiny for some time, which, perhaps concerns me. So really, we'll be having about £4.5 million, hopefully by the end of the year. We've already had 1.5, haven't we? Is that right?
Yeah, Chair, the release mechanisms, yes, are well documented, and obviously Swansea gets a regular allocation from the central pot from the city region. I think that it's important to pay tribute to the work that the central team have done in making sure that all of the requirements of both governments have been met, and it's through the work that's been done there in terms of the robust governance that's now in place and all of the progress that we're making across the projects that the monies have been released.
Yes, good. Okay. Right, Hugh, do you want to actually take it through? Or, sorry, Peter Black, yes.
A follow-up question. This £4.5 million, is that part of scheduled payments for existing projects, or is that money for new projects?
It will be in relation to Swansea's projects that are approved. So anything that we have approved can access the central pot.
So this is money we would have expected to get anyway?
Yes, but we wouldn't have had it unless it's released by the two governments.
Well, obviously, yeah. Okay.
Right, Hugh, do you want to start taking us through the report then, please?
Yeah, let me try and share it. Hopefully that's coming up on screen.
Yep.
Right. I won't take you through any of the summary here unless there are any questions. That sets out sort of the very high level position on each of the schemes and the dates for delivery, etc. In terms of phase 1, there is good progress being made. The arena is now watertight and the external cladding has actually commenced now. And again, the church hall construction has started, and the bridge is likely to be in place by the end of January. So that is going to be a real statement when that sort of gets put into place. It's being constructed on site as we speak, welded together. It arrived in Swansea in six pieces, and it'll be sprayed and then put into place. We're starting to look in detail now at the temporary uses on the north side to make sure that the city is linked to the arena scheme whilst the Swansea Central North or phase 2 comes forward. On the hotel, we're still having discussions with Welsh Government on the funding side of things. So that we'll hopefully have some positive news on that at the next meeting. Digital Vodafone have now been appointed, so in terms of Wi-Fi, in terms of the connections, the day one connections into the arena, all that is now progressing well, and that includes CCTV as well. On the residential, the Pobble agreement to buy that section office is now complete, and there are now show flats in place, which links into the NHBC inspection, which is the 10-year guarantee for any purchasers or any sort of occupation of those elements moving forward. There's a number of works on the highway which are now taking place. The main Oystermouth Road, there is some works there as well, which will continue. The art strategy with the heritage panel, which is going to sort of mask some of the areas for the residents in the arena. The artist has now been appointed for that, and there are designs being brought forward for that in due course. We've been doing marketing for the all the units on the site. There was a website launched a little while ago, and that has provided quite a positive response, mainly from local traders, and very good quality local traders as well. So we're very happy with that, and we're getting to the position where we'll be able to make a recommendation on most of the units in terms of occupiers in the next month, I suspect. So that's going well. Comms, there's a lot. There's a new website which has been launched, and that's obviously an important part of the UK-wide comms as well. And obviously, when the bridge comes to be installed, that's going to be a significant comms opportunity, and to sell Swansea as well in that respect. So that's all I was going to say on that at the moment, unless there's any questions.
Right, Chris.
Yeah, Hugh, I didn't know that Pobble were buying flats off us. I thought it was, you know, well, I've asked a question in council about this. I didn't realise they were buying flats off us. Yes,
at the time when we started this, the council housing budgets couldn't. They were dealing with the Welsh Housing Quality Standards, so they didn't have the funding in place to look at potentially buying this. So we put it to the market, and that marketing competition was eventually won by Pobble. So basically, they will be paying us a capital receipt, which will reduce the council's financial contributions to the scheme as well. So it's a positive on a number of ways.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Linda.
I just wondered why we were putting bamboo in to wherever it's going and not using native plants. That was all.
Oh, this isn't a plant in essence. This is it's digital bamboo. It's very tall. It's got lights inside it, so it's part of the digital aspect of the arena, and the lighting will be controlled from a central point, as with the sort of facade in terms of the LED facade. So most of the parkland is where the most planting is, and there are lots of local species in there as well.
Good, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Terry? Terry Hennigan?
Turning this up, right. I wanted to ask you, but it says on your paperwork about the consultation with access groups. Like to know who some of they are. But the other one is, any complaints or compliments from the local residents? Because, you know, there's tremendous amount of work going on, and I'm aware that there's quite a few people living there. I know you was making contact. I was just wondering how things are going. Not just complaints, but compliments as well.
I think we've had both, to be honest with you. You know, it's a difficult situation for local residents. It is a live construction site, and there have been issues, but we've been in consultation with all the local residents, and we've done all we can to make sure they are aware. There are sort of newsletters being sent out to all the residents, and there are regular communication meetings as well to make sure they are aware. Most of the external work, or lots of the external work, is now complete, and more of it's going to be inside from now on. So I think, you know, the tower crane has come down, for example, because all the major construction is done. So it is going to get quieter. The number of positive responses we've had from some of the residents and from other locals about the changing shape of Swansea has been really positive. And, you know, whenever, I don't think you can fail to be impressed with the scale of development and the changes it's having on the skyscraper of Swansea. So I think there are obviously issues with residents, but I think, you know, we're doing our best to manage that process. But the real positive is the number of people who are sort of expressing sort of the positive nature of what the scheme is doing for Swansea, and looking forward to it opening in due course.
Okay, Wendy Fitzgerald. Wendy, we can't hear you.
Hello.
Right.
Can you hear me now? Yes,
Yeah.
I'm muted. Yeah. I don't know if it's been covered, but in the minutes it mentioned the issue around trees in Wellington Street. Can Hugh just update us? What is the situation with the trees in Wellington Street? Because it does say on the dashboard, doesn't it, that Wellington Street and Albert Row works complete prior to Christmas embargo. So have any trees been removed, or have you managed to salvage them?
As far as I'm aware, it was 2 trees that were removed, and they had to be removed because of the relocation of the access to Tesco's. But there are more trees now being put back there than there were before. So there is a mitigation measure in place there to actually make sure that that there are more trees there than there were previously. So I think there is compensation in that respect, and it was an essential. There wasn't any choice in the trees that had to be removed because of the revised highway network to allow access into Tesco's, which is an important part of the scheme.
Okay, Terry, your hand is still up. We're moving on to Peter Brack now.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a thought. Was any consideration given to using the housing revenue account to buy these flats, given the commitment we've got to more council housing?
There was a detailed discussion with housing colleagues. At that time, they were fully committed to modernising the existing estate and bringing those up to standards. They didn't have the spare capital at that point to actually invest in these houses. But the discussion continues with housing colleagues, and we are talking to them about investing in the Shaping Swansea projects, which will move forward with the potential for council housing in the city centre and other areas as well. So it was given proper consideration. Wasn't possible at the time, but we are working towards delivering more council units as part of the schemes moving forward.
Okay, thanks. Can everybody mute their microphone unless they're speaking, please? I'm not sure if it's you, Wendy. You got your hand up as well. Will, can we move on to you, please?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Peter's asked one of the questions I was going to ask there, but it's one more. I think it's a great thing that Pobble buying the flats that we're building there. So it's sort of like the best of both worlds, really, providing housing and obviously getting a capital receipt for it. I'm guessing, obviously, it's the leasehold we're selling to them. I just wondered what the sort of terms of that were, what the sort of length of the lease is, because obviously in a long time in the future it would give the council less flexibility on the city centre if they ever wanted to change that building in the future. Is it 250-year leasehold or 999 years? And what are there any other terms that are worth noting?
If I'm being honest, I can't remember the exact term. I think it's 125 years. So it is, there is a long interest in that. Obviously, it is. There's nothing of any significance below it other than commercial units. And these days, these units are designed flexibly, so they could be changed into other uses in due course if there was a change. But I think that sort of city centre housing is a fundamental issue for generating footfall and generating more support for the city centre. So I think the use is ideal for what we want to see moving forward, and hopefully we're going to see a lot more city centre housing through the Shaping Swansea and other council initiatives.
Could we just have a? Could you find out the details on that? I'd just be interested to know if that's.
Yeah, no, happily to provide the main heads of terms. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Right, Martin Nichols.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was just going to provide a supplementary point to the question Councillor Black raised. The main reason why initially the Housing Revenue Account couldn't consider it was the borrowing cap was still in place at that stage. Clearly, it's subsequently been lifted, but too late for us to sort of retrospectively go back on this project. But that does now open up the opportunities, not just within the city centre, but wider in terms of the ability to increase the amount of affordable housing that is now part of the council's housing revenue account.
Okay, thanks for that. Wendy, wanted to ask another question?
I've got my hand up as well.
I know Wendy put her hand up just before you did. I wondered if she wanted to ask another question or she's not speaking anyway, right? Who want to you, Sue?
I'm interested in the commercial units, and you said there's been no problem. Under the current situation with so many businesses going to the wall, is that still the case? Confirm that we've got good take up with these units?
Yeah, I can confirm that. We've been, as you rightly say, the current economy is very difficult for the leisure industry, but I think sort of some of these opportunities are so good that it has demonstrated, and we've had a lot of interest from very good local businesses. So I'm very confident that we're going to be sort of making some very positive announcements on all that before long.
Good, great, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Before we move on to the next page, I've got a couple of points here. As with most businesses, ATG are actually significantly, the COVID is actually significantly affecting their business. The last time, in the last report, they'd actually shed some staff and so on. Are they continuing to actually shed the staff? You're actually saying that you are, actually speaking to them regularly. So, what's the ongoing position with them?
Well, there is a serious issue in terms of COVID. They haven't shed any more staff. I think that most staff are on furlough, and thankfully that furlough scheme is continuing. And ATG are now down to a core staff, which are sort of working on schemes and the business. We are speaking regularly to them, and we've got no real concerns. They are an equity business, and their equity partners have put quite a substantial amount of money into the business at this point in time as well. And they are planning now in terms of looking at appointing a manager for the Swansea scheme, and they are looking to this year to reopen the business again, and when the vaccines start to kick in, and then we can have sort of access to live events as well. So it's I think we're monitoring the position, but we're not we don't see any red flags at all at the moment.
Okay. And the other point actually there about, you know, further programme impacts. I understand the programme is about 6 weeks behind at the present time.
That's where we think it is. Obviously, we don't know what's going to happen over the next 6 or 7 months with COVID, etc. But given the amount of disruption and the amount of issues across the country, lots of projects actually stopped on site. This one hasn't, and I think 6 to 8 weeks or whatever it's going to end up as being is a good result for Swansea, to be honest with you.
Okay, yeah, and the last point, I know it's been raised about the hotel. They said the hotel delivery is at risk. We've gone through the tender process actually with this already. We've appointed, haven't we, or agreed?
We've appointed a company called Cairns, and they are progressing. They've made a financial request from Visit Wales to develop hotels. You know, as you'll be aware, hotels are largely closed at the moment, so it is a difficult position for them. But they are committed to Swansea because, you know, this wouldn't open for a little while until and hopefully by then the COVID position is over. So they are still committed to moving forward, and we're working with them and working with Visit Wales to find a solution to make sure the hotel can be delivered. It's an important.
So there should be an end result there then.
Hopefully, we're waiting for responses from Visit Wales at the moment. It's in there. They're considering it. Obviously, state aid is an issue. Brexit is, we don't know whether that's changed or not in reality. So there's a number of complex issues which are coming together here, which we're trying to resolve, which we will hopefully resolve by the next meeting of this group.
Okay, right. If we move on to the next page, then please, Swansea Central North.
Swansea Central North, there's basically where we have been waiting for the GPA to actually move things forward. I've literally just had an email this morning to say that they are moving forward their business case sort of assessments, which is really positive news. So that is a start. We understand that the GPA were issued with quite substantial amounts of money through the last spending review. So it is looking positive, and it is moving forward. It's just the timescales are going to be the issue on this.
Any questions on this particular part? You know, there was one, I refer back to the letter on the 15th October that unfortunately didn't come in for the last meeting. It mentions about majority of jobs to be located at the Swansea hub, if approved and funded, are already based in the Greater Swansea area. So we're still talking about the GPA with this. Yes, they are in another part of Swansea now.
It's a mixture, to be honest with you. There's, I think we need to be careful about what we say about tenants at the moment, but it's there is a mixture of people we're looking at who are either not in Swansea at the moment or would possibly be relocated in Swansea. So there is, but there is a significant demand in terms of the number of people who we're looking to provide accommodation for.
Right. Okay. When do you think we'll have some news on that?
I would hope within the next 2 months we would have sort of a substantive position to report.
Okay, right. No more questions. We move on to the next one, the Kingsway infrastructure. Page 12.
Yeah, the Kingsway infrastructure. There's not a lot to say on this. I think it's now reaching sort of completion. Defects are the main issue which are being dealt with at the moment. So that's where we are, and that is being sort of finalised as we speak, really. So it's coming to a conclusion.
Okay. Any questions?
No. Shall we move on?
No. Move on to the next one. Yeah.
7172, the Kingsway. This is also progressing. There is we went out to tender for the construction contract. Unfortunately, there was an issue in terms of contractors didn't comply, or none of the contractors complied with the requirements of the tender. So we've had to go out to back out to all of the bidders to get clarifications and to look at repricing certain aspects of the scheme. So that's ongoing at the moment, and obviously that has delayed our potential reporting to Cabinet, which is now set for March as opposed to December, which it was originally.
Mm-hmm. You know, with regard, you said none of the tenderers actually met, you know, they were all non-compliant and so on. I'm actually reading here, they were non-compliant with regard to budget. So how are we going to actually tackle that at the end of the day? Are we going to change the specification that they actually tendered on, or?
We have done a review of the specification. We've accepted some of the suggestions they are making. We've rejected others, and the revised specification is what's gone back out to them to rebid on.
So it's not a problem really with regards to. I'm a little bit with regards to, you know, budget at the end of the day. I know the you know, the whole scheme is actually working to a budget and so on, and it's a pity Ben is not here, because I would have liked to have a breakdown of. I think we brought that up before with Ben. I think it was a complicated situation with regards to all these different parts of the city deal. What they must be broken down into individual budgets. So with the available budget here, is it quite a serious situation with regards to the gap?
We're in a tender situation, so I've got to be careful what I say, I guess, but it's not a huge amount we're talking about in the context of the whole budget. So I'm confident that we'll sort of bring a lot of that back in when we get the tenders back after the repricing exercise comes in. So, you know, I think there's you know, the team are working really hard on that, and there's a piece of work to do and a piece of work to analyse those bids when they come in as well. So I can't really answer that in detail, but I'm reasonably confident that we can certainly reduce, if not eliminate, the over extras.
Yeah. Okay, Martin.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to clarify a couple of points on that. The note refers to that the tenders were non-compliant and in excess. So there was both the reasons as to why we were unable to proceed to a point. And the non-compliant were mainly because a lot of the tenders had made alternative suggestions. But the problem was they made alternative suggestions and none of them were on a like-for-like comparison. So it would have been unsafe to have awarded on that basis.
Yeah.
The primary reason as to why they are in excess of the available budget is the increased floor space by adding an additional floor to the building to maximise the accommodation. So that's the principal reason for why the cost had increased. It was a conscious decision rather than something that wasn't expected. I would imagine that the full detailed breakdown of the budget will be set out within the Cabinet report, which is indicated there. We are hoping to bring by the end of March. Fully expect that to be in the public domain and fully expect to be able to answer those detailed questions and get Mr. Smith to answer the detailed questions regarding how the allocations works across the city deal as part of that process, if that helps, Chair.
Yes, okay, I'm grateful for that. Right, Chris.
Martin, you say you added another floor on it. So you added another floor after the specs went out?
No, it was prior to the specs going out.
So
after the budget was set, Chris.
So how did they budget? How did they cost the building and then get it wrong because it was another floor added?
I think to be fair to Martin, that's just because the original budget was trying to keep things within the original budget. The additional floor has caused some issues in terms of that, but the revision of the spec which has gone out, and as Martin says, there were various alternatives which were being put forward for elements of the construction, and we think some of them are sensible and we've accepted those. Others have rejected. So the revised specification, which has gone out for them all to bid on, is what we will get back shortly, and we'll be able to analyse the bids and tell you exactly what the position is there in terms of budget.
Can I ask a very simple question? Are we value engineering this building into a budget? because given the experiences of value engineering in other projects in Swansea, it could cause a few problems.
We're not looking to value engineer. I think some of the suggestions they made were more structural than sort of the facades and things like that. So I think that there is a piece of work. We'll have to analyse what comes back, obviously, but we're not. This is an important building for the Kingsway. It's an important building for the city centre. So we're not looking to value engineer the way it looks, because I think that's really important, and it's setting a benchmark for Swansea as well. Then.
Okay, thank you.
Right, Leader.
Yeah, Chair. I mean, Martin and Hugh have covered the main points I was going to make. I was just going to add really to what they said. I think where we say non-compliant bids, or that the bids, as Martin had said, came back in a way that made it difficult to compare, I think that was the point. When you write a requirement and you send it out to contractors, sometimes there is an opportunity for them to respond in a way that you didn't expect, and therefore you're not able to fairly compare one bid with another. And I think that's all that's happened here, really, is that we've tightened the requirements up to make sure that when bidders respond, they respond in a way that we then can compare fairly, and can make sure that any contract that emerges from the winning bid is something that we can hold the contractor to. So I think that's the rework, if you like, that's been done, is that there appeared to be more flexibility than we anticipated in the way in which bidders responded, and that left us unable to fully compare the bids fairly.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. Just one further point actually on this. Sorry, I forgot to actually bring up the completion of this building. You know, it is an important part. I would say it probably is the most important, really, to accommodate, you know, bring new jobs to Swansea at the end of the day. I've got all papers on the table. I can't seem to find it. I saw 12 months for design, 12 months for planning, and I think 24 months or something else. The completion date is actually down here as 02/23. With the time aspect I actually mentioned there, it looked more like 2025. What is the expected completion date at the end of this?
The original completion date prior to this tender issue was Q4 22, so it is just slipping into 23. Sorry, so that is correct. It's sort of we're looking at February 23.
Right. Okay. Right. If we move on to Wine Street, then please. Next slide.
Okay, some of the advanced works have been completed on this prior to Christmas. The new lights in the trees were put on, which looked really good in terms of the P lights, etc. The tender for the main works has been received, and FBR7 report is appointing a partner to actually sort of undertake the works early this year now. So that is sort of almost kicking off. There are stakeholder liaison meetings continuing. We have had a number of meetings. The December one was unfortunately cancelled, and there are ongoing discussions with the various stakeholder groups as well, including residents and disability contacts, which is the usual sort of the whole gambit of disability groups who are contacted as part of this. So it's I think it's very little to report because it's all going well at the moment.
Any questions? No. What I was going to ask really with regards to it's on about the risk, you know, of business failure. I know it not only affects Wine Street and so on, but what is the state of the businesses in Wine Street? Have we been notified of anybody actually going into liquidation or whatever?
I think it's a whole range, to be honest with you. I think sort of lots of businesses are obviously closed at the moment, which is going to cause complications. But I think all the businesses and all the consultations we've had, they're crying out for this work to be undertaken to help support those businesses. So I think it's really important piece of work for the existing businesses, but also if they do fail, sadly, it is then sort of gives a really strong position to sell Wine Street in terms of reoccupying those units because the new public realm works have been completed. So it actually fulfills two tasks really. It actually protects existing occupiers, but also gives the opportunity to landowners to re-let the properties with the benefit of significantly improved public realm to make it more attractive as well. So it is an important scheme for the city.
Okay, thanks. Leader.
Yeah, just to re-emphasise that point, Chair. I mean, I think the investment that we've made to protect jobs across Swansea, over and above what the government help has been in terms of targeting, helping businesses to create outdoor space that's usable, that will have protected many hundred jobs. We're just working up the actual totals at the moment. But as Mr. Mowbray has said, the continued confidence that the investments in the city centre are bringing not only help businesses retain their presence in the city centre, but obviously are looking at helping to attract additional businesses in. And that's going to become even more and more important as we get out of the COVID restrictions and we get into full recovery. The independent analysis at the moment, which you may have seen, suggests that Swansea will lead Wales's recovery with an 8.1% jobs growth this year. So again, it's important all of the actions that we're taking continue to support business recovery as we get out of COVID.
Okay, thanks. Peter?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just a quick question, I believe. Tree management, could I have clarification on the scale and extent of what is covered by that term, please? Thank you.
Obviously, the trees are important to the street. We have had to remove, again, I believe it's 2 trees, but those were essential as they were too close to buildings and they were causing damage. They are being replaced with more, and there is some crown work being done to improve the tree coverage in Swansea, but in terms of Wine Street. So there will be no overall detriment, and there will be sort of more green areas put into the scheme to compensate for that as well. So the green infrastructure sort of commitment is being looked at seriously in terms of the design of the street and creating planters, etc., to make it more attractive, basically, as well, because green is important to us all in terms of making these areas feel good and feel better as part of the.
Okay, that's good news. Thank you, Hugh.
Okay, thanks. Right, if we move on to the next slide. Your hand is still up, Peter. Right, city centre marketing of strategic sites.
Yeah, this is the Shaping Swansea project. It's now going full guns in that respect. We've started the dialogue sessions, and those are going really well. So I'm very pleased with the process so far, and with the information which the bidders are providing. So it is a procurement process we're in, so I can't say too much, but it's I'm very pleased with the progress we're making on this, and we would hope to be in a position to appoint by August, September.
Right, I can't see anybody actually wants to speak. I wanted clarification on the risks, really. The planning policy and travel plan. I must admit, quite some years ago, I actually did a inward investment scrutiny, and one of the problems that was actually highlighted from businesses and so on was the actually getting a foothold into Swansea was difficult through planning. I assume that's actually been resolved now, i.e., they weren't very helpful at that time. And travel plan, what exactly are we actually talking about there? And also, we're actually talking about bridging a viability gap. What are we talking? Are we talking about funding there again, or what? Yeah, can you expand?
Yeah, fine. First of all, in terms of planning.
Yeah, we've lost you. We've lost you then.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, no, yes.
Sorry. In terms of planning, I think we're working very well with planning colleagues. They've been very supportive, very helpful through the arena process and the arena. So I've got absolutely no complaints, and I actually congratulate them on sort of the support they've given us. So it's very pleasing, to be honest with you. In terms of the planning policy, the travel plan position. The travel plan is about how you access the city centre, and in terms of various nodal routes in terms of buses, trains, cars, etc. Car parking is a key component on that, and colleagues in housing, in highways are looking at that now. There's a study underway to try and resolve those issues. And again, in terms of the discussions we're having with on Shaping Swansea, highways colleagues have been very supportive and very positive in terms of the potential highways and car parking solutions to some of the schemes. So again, I think that the work undergoing is going to resolve lots of these issues. So that's that is an ongoing position, but I think it's going in the right direction, definitely.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, we've actually got an update on the city centre travel plan. Oh God.
Can I ask a quick question, Chair?
It may. Yes, go on. Sorry, Will.
Thank you. Just regarding the traffic management, the city centre and transport and everything, I'm just wondering if much thought and work's gone into the sort of future infrastructure around self-drive cars. Maybe I'm not sure. I'm not no expert on this topic, but I'm sure you know a lot more about it than me. Just wondering how that will be accommodated. Are they pull-in zones? Are they anticipated to be pull-in zones or something like that? And is there space for those being built into city centre designs and our other schemes?
The road network has been modelled, and it did take into account all the schemes which are sort of either on site or planned. So there was a big exercise which did look at that. In terms of, I'm not certainly no expert on sort of driverless cars, etc. But my understanding is that they need less space because they actually manage the space between the various cars. So it's looking at the key routes and the key networks for those as they come forward, really. And it is a future issue which we will need to resolve in due course. But I don't think it's going to cause any issues with the current network, as far as I'm aware.
Right, yeah, I mean, what my question was, with the sort of arena and the Kingsway, and when we're modelling these areas, are we speaking to qualified people to say what would a potential self-drive car drop-off area look like, and this is where we put it in the future and things like that? That's my question.
We've certainly modelled drop-off areas, and those are incorporated into the arena for buses and for taxis, etc. I think that sort of the technology has taken a few hits recently because of various aspects. So I'm not sure how many experts there are in that field, but we certainly have the drop-off areas, and there's no reason why those couldn't be used by these cars or public transport versions of these things in due course as well. So it's it is future-proofed as far as we're aware. And as far as the advice that we can get from specialists in terms of transportation, car parking, etc.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, yeah, that's an item actually on the agenda on the 11th of May. Will Stuart Davis is actually coming to give us an update on the city centre travel plan. So I think it is very important actually. Right, if we move on to the strategic sites and projects overview, I know we've spoken about quite a few of these items already. I can actually see where I was talking about the 12 months, what I mentioned earlier now, the 12-month planning, 12-month design and 24-month build. It was on the Skyline project, which is actually, it's 4 years time, it's 2025. Right. I don't know, do you want to actually comment quickly on each of these?
I think the leaders commented on Castle Square. That's made progress since this report, and hopefully we'll be in a position where we can take a cabinet report fairly shortly on that, and that will also outline the sort of initial design concepts, which are really good. It increases the green space quite significantly in the square, and it looks to add in new restaurant uses and improve the public realm space there as well. So it's we can bring the details of that to the group shortly, and I think it's a real positive, and it's a real important aspect of the scheme, of the city schemes, to be honest with you, to aid with recovery as well. So it is an important scheme. It's in the heart of the city centre, and it will put sort of some of the heart back into the city centre and improve on what's there already. Unless there's any questions on that, Tower Riverside, nothing really to say on that. We're still sort of working on that, and the master plan is being moved forward. That links to the earlier question in terms of the various uses in the Havard area, and Penderyn is obviously on site. Skyline is looking positive at the moment, and they're very keen on having a significant leisure destination, and we are getting interest in that from a number of occupiers at the moment. So making sure that master planning is right for that site, and it does create a major leisure destination for Swansea, is really important. And that is something which is in the Shaping Swansea. It's one of the schemes in that, which the partners there will take forward in due course as well. We've dealt, I think, with Skyline. That's again positive, and the ongoing discussions are now with Welsh Government, with a view to making a financial offer to Skyline. Mariner Street, I'm not going to say it's. I can't hide from that. It's been difficult with the contractor, but it is getting there. It's topped out, and it'll be a positive scheme for the top end of High Street to support some of the businesses there and to bring more life into that area as well. So I haven't got anything else on those to say, unless anybody's got any questions.
Yeah, you know the Mariners Street, that's the Pobble development, isn't it?
No, it's a private sector development for student housing.
Right. Okay. Palace Theatre.
Chair, we
Sorry.
are all stuck. The Kingsway screen slide is stuck on a lot of our
Okay.
screens.
Apologies. Shall I stop sharing and I'll stop sharing and do it again?
Yeah, yes, please, yes. I must admit, I'm looking at hard copy, so.
I can't see the screen with it on screen, unfortunately. So.
Somebody's microphone on you?
Sorry, apologies.
It's all right. Give everybody a break.
No, that's the wrong one. For some reason, it's disappeared from my screen at the moment.
There we are, it's back on now.
That's the wrong. What's on now? Sorry, apologies.
It's Civic Centre relocation and Swansea Central Hub Office Hub.
Yeah, that's a different scheme, to be honest with you.
One,
So that's the wrong one. Oh.
All right,
I don't understand. I have to close this. Sorry, I might have to leave and come back because this is just not working at the moment. It's all frozen. If I leave and come back in a second, apologies.
Okay, we'll have a 2-minute break.
Councillor Jones, could I try to share the agenda on my screen? Would that be helpful?
Well, we're nearly coming to the end of these slides anyway. I think, you know, if you can bring them back.
No problem.
I don't think the agenda is going to help us really. We've only got a few slides really on this presentation, and then we're on to the commercial opportunities in rural areas.
Jeff?
Yeah.
All the slides are available on Modern Gov because I've got them on my screen.
All the what, sorry?
all the slides and the agenda, they're all on Modern Gov.
Yeah, I've got my mind too, but I think the point here is that for the video recording of the committee, it'd be useful to have the slides being shown as you go through them.
I'm sorry, I'll try and reshare it.
All right. Well, if you can't find them,
that should be back now.
That's it. Yeah.
And we were on. I think we're on that slide.
I can't see. Yeah, Palace Theatre. Yes. Unless anybody want to go back on a couple of other slides before, which were to do with. Well, there's the first one actually: Castle Square, Kilby Hill, and Mariner Street.
No.
No, right. We'll go on to this one then. Okay, Palace Theatre.
Yeah, I think that's moving forward
Okay.
in terms of a scheme. So I don't think there's much to report on this. It's the main issue is the construction tender moving forward and discussions with tenants. So it's all positive at the moment.
And this is flats again, yes?
No, this is an office scheme.
Office scheme, right.
Yeah. Town centre loan, again, that's a pretty positive position. There's a lot of demand for this scheme in terms of money to look at various aspects of the city, and there are a number of schemes which are currently under consideration. And HASA, the scheme in the former Woolworths, that's made an application recently. So there's more applications coming in, and there's more money being spent on this, and we're looking at sort of some of the underspend from some of the other regions as well. So it's going well. Pontoons is for the river.
I think, Chris, do you want to ask anything on that?
Yeah, just a question here on this one about Woolworth. Is that going to be flats?
It's a mixture, Chris. In terms of its, the ground floor will remain as retail. The first floor and second floor, they're looking at offices, and they're looking at flats above that, with the greening on the roof and various greenhouses to provide sort of a really interesting GI opportunity with growing facilities on the roof for the residents as well. So it's a very much a mixed-use scheme, and it complements what's going on in terms of 71, 72, and creating sort of a good area there in terms of you've got the square between 71, 72 and the HASA building in the former car park at the back of that, which will again create a really interesting piece of public realm for the residents and for Swansea.
Because it's a massive building with a huge basement as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was all flats, but there we are. No,
they're definitely looking at a mixed-use scheme, and let's be honest, the value is largely in the rental from the retail, which I know is a difficult position at the moment, but that retailer wants to renew or is in the process of renewing the lease, to be honest. And there is this office requirement above that, and then sort of circa 50 flats on the higher elements of that, which will, and certainly the higher flats will have some amazing views across to Mumbles and towards Devon as well. So it's an interesting scheme.
Okay. Right, the pontoons.
Pontoons, this is still a piece of work in terms of feasibility, and we're looking for money to take this forward. This is looking to connect the city and the marina elements into the river, to have a cop works to the stadium, and various areas as well could be added in due course. So this is a base scheme, and this is just looking to create sort of an initial scheme which can grow and be built on as we move forward. So I think it's a really good thing to do, and hopefully we get the money in due course to actually sort of put that in place.
Right. Okay.
Could I ask a question on that, Chair?
Yes.
Just a bit more detail. I don't really understand what that is.
Sorry, it's basically being able to have river taxis or using the copper jack, etc. Because at the moment, when these things go up the river, they've got to turn round and come back, and they can't drop anybody off, or they can't sort of access any areas along the river. So this would basically provide pontoons in the river to enable access to various locations and various points along the river, including the stadium, Havercop Works, etc. So, and I think that's something which is going to be a growth area in the future, and we'll certainly be able to build on that. But the important thing is to get the initial investment and to start the process, and to get sort of some circuits in place where people can create opportunities to travel from the city centre and exit in the Harvard area and in the stadium area, the White Rock area, etc. So there are various opportunities there, and we can build on that, as I said, in the future. I think it's an important thing to start getting used to the river as well.
Totally agree with that.
Yeah. Phil Downing.
Yeah, just on the pontoons now. Are we talking about
Somebody got the microphone on, yeah?
Yeah, I have.
Well, not you. I meant somebody. I can hear somebody making a cup of tea in the kitchen somewhere, yeah? And talking.
Right, just want to ask, will we be looking at the pontoons on both sides of the river? Because when the PDC went up, this was one of the things that was discussed. Obviously, bringing people from Swansea into the Copperworks area, and the immense boost it will have for the tourism in that side. And obviously, we did talk about river taxis, and this would be fantastic for Swansea itself.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you, and I think I think we're looking at as many locations as we can. That will be sort of defined by the funding that's available. So I think there's more work to be done, but I think my view is we need to get an initial scheme in there with as many as we can in terms of pontoons, and that then can be added to in due course in terms of once we can prove that there is a genuine sort of business case and they are being used. So I think it's certainly an area which will be grown in the future, but it's starting small and growing from there, I think, is going to be the key to delivering this.
Right. Okay. Move on to the next page, then, please.
I have got my hand up, Chair.
My apologies, Robert. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm glad Will brought this up, because this is very important, of linking making the destination at the Harvard and linking it up along the river corridor to our maritime quarter. In fact, this goes back to the very, very early planning when we had the maritime quarter, the river corridor, and the enterprise zone. But I think this will help the destination, having these pontoons there, making use of the river. Swansea had always turned its back on the river, but with their river corridor and the work carried out with the PDC, that it strengthens that destination. So we don't make really enough use of that river. And once it's developed along that corridor, there'll be a lot more to point out. And also looking at our cultural history as well, that the industrial history of the Swansea Valley is extremely important. When you look at places like Ironbridge, who have built a huge tourism industry around Ironbridge, and yet our Swansea Valley has actually more industrial heritage than Ironbridge. So we got a lot to build on, a lot to work on.
Okay, thanks. Paxton.
Thank you, Chairman. In terms of this corridor and going up the river, my understanding was Bascule Bridge was a limiting factor as far as Copperjack was concerned. Obviously, this is in the process of repair now. How much further are we anticipating that we'll be able to go up, obviously, in terms of the river? Because once you get up, I suppose, towards the M4, then presumably the depth is such that you're going to be struggling. But how far do you think we'll be able to go?
Well, I think the main constraint really is the weir, and which is a little bit further up than the Bascule Bridge. So I think that is the limiting factor, to be honest with you, at the moment. So it won't go a lot further than the Bascule Bridge, which when that goes back, that will obviously be able to be to go past that and go under it, etc. So there is a limit, but I think the major demand is probably from the Havercop Works and the destination, as Robert says, and for the Liberty Stadium as well. So and pleasure cruises, which will give the opportunity for people to get off and give them linked tours, really, because I think it's adding value to these things. So if the Copperjack can stop at the Havard area and give tours to people around the sort of the Havard copper related issues, and then go back, it adds to the tourism aspects and adds to the opportunities to bring people to Swansea, basically.
Okay, thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Yeah, the limiting factor is the weir, but one of the plans that was put forward many years ago when this all originally started was the depth of water under the viaduct is not exactly brilliant, but we could have dredged that and then also open up the river or the stream that goes up into the half rounds, which then links into the Fenrod Lake. So one of the proposals put forward is when we looked at the canal, and Robert will know all about this, we looked at the extension to the canal, was to actually open up that area, and we could have taken the boat up to the Fenrod Lake. It is an investment, and that would actually increase the valuation on the Towie Valley by a huge amount, as canals normally do anyway. And that, I think that was the original project, to take it up into the enterprise zone. And I'm sure Robert can remember that, because I know that him and his colleague Lawrence were the actual proposers of it, and extremely good idea. And let's move forward with it.
Okay, thanks. Robert, do you want to come back in? Or?
Yeah, it'll be navigable as far as the Beaufort Weir, but the scheme that Chris is referring to was British Urban Developments, if you remember, it was the 5 major house building people that came together, that we would look at the river. The Bascule Bridge, Grade 2 listed, is important that we maintain these listed buildings. And that bridge is important to Swansea's history, because we just actually bulldozed most of it away because it was such an eyesore, and people were glad to see most of it go. But now people see the importance of Swansea where it is and that industrial heritage. It would have been able to go navigable through into the Fenrod and linking up. It was also perhaps linking up the Tennant Canal through the docks, new gates into the river to go up. It is still feasible. Those in the local development plan, the linkages are still there should money become available. So, but it is important that we maintain that Bascule Bridge, because another year probably it would not have been able to save it. But the pontoons is just a small step forward at the moment, but it is only as far as the Beaufort Weir before they'd have to turn round at this moment in time. But I suppose we got to look forward and be ambitious.
Right, okay.
Just one other question, Chair, if I may, on the pontoon sort of structure, just very quickly. I'm just wondering if it'd enable water sports such as kayak hire and things like that in the and maybe from where Skyline's based, it might be a sort of perfect location for that sort of thing. I'm just wondering if that's been considered.
Yeah, we are looking at that, Hugh, aren't we? And also yes, the rowing club as well are looking to locate and use far more use of the river, and are looking for a site for the storage of their rowing boats. That, as you know, at the moment are down by the Dylan Thomas Centre.
Right.
That's good. I think that could be a real tourist driver, that little kayak hire, because the day out with the kids would be good. Thanks. Yeah,
the river is designated as a rowing training river, so that's a positive. And obviously, sort of kayaking, paddle boarding, all of this is becoming more popular at the moment. And having access to the river is, and that comes back to sites as well, because if we're going to be developing through Shaping Swansea things like St Thomas Station site, we should be able to get access to the river through that as well. So it's making as many access points as possible, I think, is the key.
Okay, I got the last one really on this will be Terry Hennigan, but I saw Vicky Thompson put a hand up. Did you want to comment on this, Vicky, or are you querying about the?
Yes, I'm one of the officers working on the pontoon project.
Yeah.
It was in relation to Councillor Will Thomas's comments in regards to the water sports. The current design, which is being looked into on the structural aspect, may not be able to support the water sports aspect due to the different levels. So an additional one may be needed to accommodate water sports to be launched from the pontoon area.
Okay, thanks, that's helpful. Right, Terry?
Yeah, regarding the water sports on the river, a new company opened up on the Morford estate about 12 months ago. I think Robert Francis Davis will know a little bit more because I believe he actually opened it with this company. But they are looking at all these different kinds of sports, whether it's kayaking, rowing and everything else. I thought I'd just give you a little heads up on that because it's situated in the right place as well.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Right, if we move on to the next sheet then, the one headed Velindre. Now, are there any questions actually on any of the items actually shown here? Peter? Peter Jones?
Yeah. Yes, thank you, Chair. Struggling with my mic control. The Swansea Vale item, I think I raised this a month ago at a previous meeting of this panel, and I subsequently had a discussion with officers, including from the nature conservation team of the council. I'm slightly surprised to see that we're still awaiting the final ecology report, which I was led to understand in those discussions was imminent. And I'd be like, what is the position on that, please? And I also understood, of course, that the site is in part a water meadow. And of course, water meadows are increasingly scarce as a form of habitat across the UK. And so I presume that in terms of what is described here as constraints, that would be a major consideration. And I also note, of course, the final bullet point under this item, further flood modelling and advice being sought by NRW. I just wondered if we could have a further comment, please, on the development constraints on this site, and particularly, of course, the natural environment constraints. Thank you.
Unfortunately, we are still awaiting the ecology report. We're waiting for the ecology team and the ecologists to finalise that. So a lot of things can't move forward until we got that. And unfortunately, I think this is largely the same as reported last month. So I think it is progressing. We are getting there, but we are waiting for the final report. And that will look to address the water meadows and some of these other things to allow those to happen, to allow some of the other development sites to move forward. We understand that NRW are revising their flood modelling or their flood requirements, which is going to increase the burden in terms of how you and what you can develop. So that's just a sort of a marker in a way, in terms of we need to be considering the revised requirements of NRW before we can take anything forward as well, and that needs to be addressed as well in the ecology report, because there are potential mitigating measures through watercourses, etc., for that as well. So there's a package of things here which need to be brought together to move the scheme forward, but unfortunately we're not quite there yet.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, it's just can we have an update on the Velindre sometime in the future? Not now, given at the time we have, but it would be interesting to find out what it says, marketing can continue, etc. But a review in the current marketing plan. Is there any chance that we could have some update on that at some time in the future?
Yes, by all means. I think we have challenged the consultants we've got on that, and they are currently reviewing the marketing plans and how we actually move that forward. So happy to bring that back in due course.
Okay, thanks. Right, if we move on to the last sheet, really, the Tower Riverside corridor. We've had some comments on this already. Any questions on any of the items here? No. Okay, right. Well, Thanks, Hugh, for that, and thanks, Robert Francis Davis and the leader. If there are no more questions, we shall move on to the last item on the agenda. I don't know if you want to stay, Hugh, and the leader, and well, it doesn't look like it. Okay, Claire Jameson, Victoria Thompson, thanks for sitting through that. You probably found it interesting anyway. You probably learned something. I hope everybody's actually read the papers actually on this. Is somebody just going to give us perhaps a bit of an overview of what you do and
yes,
so on?
I can take you through the presentation quickly because I know time is of the essence, and then maybe comment and questions at the end.
Yeah.
Okay, so if I share my screen, bear with me.
Yes, please, you can.
Let me know if I freeze or you don't see these slides moving on.
Yeah. Okay.
Should be sharing. Can you see the full screen displayed?
Yeah, it's a bit small, the you know, the contents and so on, but
right, okay, wait a minute.
see the crowd fine, yeah.
There's probably a larger screen that I can do. So if I just unshare that and change where I put my scrutiny. There we go. Let's just and share presentation. Change screens. Do that. Share. That. And let's just go to slideshow. Play. How's that? Full screen?
Yes, that's better, yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, so I'm Vicky Thompson. I'm the RDP lead for Swansea Rural Development Partnership. So as you've already seen, I won't go through the contents page. This is what we'll cover.
Yeah.
Okay, so the team is made up of 3 project officers, myself, Neil Stokes and Sean Green, of which I've said I'm leading on the programme, but fully supported through the other members of staff. And we have a slightly wider team of Chris Davis and Christopher Belinsky, who does finance and our project support. So the Rural Development Programme runs from 2014 to 2023, although the title is 2020. So we're funded through the Agricultural Rural Fund for Rural Development and the European Union and Welsh Government. The aim is to increase productivity, diversity, efficiency of the Welsh farming and forestry businesses, improving competitiveness, resilience and reducing their reliance on subsidies. So we are aiming to improve Welsh environment, encouraging sustainable practices, sustainable management of our natural resources, climate action in Wales, and to promote a strong, sustainable economic growth and encourage greater community-led development. So that's the Wales-wide programme. In Swansea, we administer the Leader Fund, so that's administered through our local action group, and it's very much a case of being community-led as opposed to business-led. So the local action group is made up of private, third and public sector representatives, of which Councillor Paxton Hewoods is one of our members. And we recently refreshed our local development strategy to take on a one planet approach in response to the climate action emergency. We have 3 strategic aims, which are to increase well-being, the ecosystem resilience through maintaining and adding value to our natural and cultural resources, to develop sustainable transport and energy initiatives that reduce emissions and mitigate climate change impacts, and to strengthen our self-sufficiency of the local economy support active, resilient and connected communities. So what is the One Planet approach? Well, it's an awareness of our impact of activities we have on the planet, taking into account to reduce our resources we consume and waste we produce. So in Swansea, the average global footprint per person is 3.2 global hectares. So if everyone lived like this, we would need 2¼ Earths to sustain our lifestyles, which I'm sure you could agree is not possible. A One Planet approach looks to be a resilient, sustainable future. So our vision of what Swansea RDP hopes our rural communities can achieve and to have influence on the wider Swansea communities is we want a One Planet future that increases community resilience and self-reliance by producing more of what it consumes. It does this in a way that's less damaging to people's health and the environment. It supports an abundance of natural resources and biodiversity, encourages an end to needless waste, yields more local and meaningful jobs, and gives a greater protection from the possibility of disruption in the rest of the world in the environment, trade and economy. And it reduces the area's ecological and carbon footprints. Okay, so Swansea RDP has outputs to report back to Welsh Government and Wales Rural Network. As you can see here, we've got a number which the third column shows what our set target is by Welsh Government. As you can see on the final column to the right, we've got figures which we've achieved from projects that have closed. We're halfway through, and as you can see, we've exceeded a number of those points. So we're quite confident that we're not going to underachieve on the ones which are still outstanding. Our financial position. So as you can see here, we've been awarded 1.454 million for the total RDP grant. This covers the day-to-day administration as well as our funding budgets. As I said, we're halfway through, so more or less half of our spend has been incurred, and we have a remaining of 692,474 and 45p. We've reprofiled our funding pots. This is so we can give more benefit to our local communities. The figure on reprofile is just over £500,000, and as you can see, we have half of that total more or less to which has already been committed, and just over half to be allocated to projects. So what have we funded so far? These are the ones which are completed. So we've had Killing Community Solar Power feasibility study. This feasibility study has gone on to enable a solar farm in Dunvant to unlock a multi-million-pound Welsh Government deal. And provides over 300 businesses and rural households with clean green energy. We have the Iron Age Roundhouse Education Facility, which you'll have driven past when going through Park Mill or even visited. This is in current use, although the funded project has completed. Market at the Mill, again, another project which is based at Park Mill Gower Heritage Centre. This completed whereby the project enabled local businesses to link in and to sell their produce with an education element to it. Since during COVID, the Market and the Mill has been resurrected, but without funding through RDP, and it continues to be a focal point for some rural businesses to link in and sell produce. Other ones which I couldn't pick out, which have been of interest, recently the Pennard Community Hub feasibility study. This is to look at the potential of an existing site in Pennard for their community hub to be developed and basically add value to the community. We've got a number of transport links, as you can see there, and other feasibility studies which are being picked up and going forth into funding applications which are in development. So our current projects, we've got a community supported agriculture programme which has just come to the end at the end of December. This is one of the largest ones in Wales and is based in Lennon, for the growing fields, and pickup points are in Park Mill. So community supported agriculture creates a self-sustaining rural economy through engagement, education and trade environment projects. It has over 120 members which are receiving a membership share in locally grown organic vegetables. Gower off-road cycle routes. This one is due to start in the spring. It's been delayed due to COVID and has had a slight impact on work starting, but we're confident that's going to complete this year coming. And our final one, which is active, is Big Meadow Surf and Turf. Again, this is a community supported agriculture scheme, started in March, just at the start of lockdown, and has done marvellously and have been able to support 60 households where their target is 50, and is also in the process now of developing the surf and turf element. But again, that's been delayed due to the current lockdown and social distancing rules. So how do you access our grants? Well, if you're a community group or social enterprise with a wider benefit to your community, there's a two-stage application for large grants. So we do open calls. The last funding window which we had, which will be finalised on projects, was in the summer, and that's provided the opportunity for applicants to do 12 months projects at 30,000, 15, 40 and 18 months at 50,000. There's a minimum of 30% match required for all projects, and in the last round it was 140,000 grants available for the whole window. We aim to do application turnaround in 22 weeks, and all projects must be completed and drawdown of funds by February 2023. So we've also got another funding application which is open at the moment, which is our fast tracks. This is only a one-stage full application, so there's no need for a PIF, whereas the full application on the large grants has a PIF and full application process. The maximum grant on the fast tracks is 5k with a 30% match required, and application turnaround is aimed at 7 weeks. This was a direct response from the local action groups to COVID, and also to enabling community groups to be able to access funds and deliver projects more easily and at a quicker pace. It's one fast track application per organisation, but they can still apply for the larger grants. Applicants are also offered on both types of funding applications the opportunity to submit applications with feedback before final submission. This allows for us to enable each applicant to have the best opportunity to be supported. So what do we do for rural businesses? So although the RDP programme is centred around community approach rather than individual business support and development, the team recognises that rural communities span much wider than the leader approach. The RDP team acknowledges that in order to increase health and well-being in Swansea's rural communities, there is a responsibility to work with our businesses to identify necessary mechanisms that create a resilient foundational economy. In order to capitalise on opportunities to maximise the rural economy, the team may provide guidance and support around funding. We may signpost them to relevant organisations which may be able to provide support, and networking opportunities, feedback on funding applications, and sometimes just being there to listen to our rural business ideas, which was seen during the pandemic. every RDP team, every inquiry that we do receive will, which is not eligible for leader support, we will do our best to offer an alternative and to try and support them and meet their needs. So commercial overview in rural Swansea. So I think throughout the whole of Swansea, we can agree that the last 9 months have had a massive impact on our business opportunities and economy. Even more so in our rural communities where we depend upon tourism, that spend, social distancing has really hindered opportunities within our rural communities. So on discussions with rural communities since March, I've highlighted difficulties and uncertainty for a number of sectors. Tourism, I've reported inability to capitalise on visitor spend. Accommodation is non-existent despite travel restrictions abroad. Minimal demand for localised staycays due to lockdown restrictions again, and little capacity or no ability to diversify and financial losses. Hospitality, as we know, has been closed down numerous times through the lockdown. Insufficient assistance for smaller businesses, underfunded support in response to closures, difficulties in timings of the restrictions and stock levels, and supply chain disruptions, social distancing and difficulties diversifying their business model. Primary and secondary food producers have reported collapses in supply chains due to closures in hospitality and restrictions placed on the industry, insufficient financial support and reduction in avenues to market. Restrictive selling, food waste and unable to diversify easily, business to business trade significantly has reduced. Food retail has also seen similar issues with demand for local produce, but also have seen an increase for local, but this is dependent on the capacity to deliver to customers who have reported increases in sales, but concerns regarding customer retention once supermarkets make delivery slots more available. Again, insufficient funds and financial support for smaller businesses, business closures, and unable to capitalise on visitor spend.
Yeah, can you abbreviate this, because we've had these, papers to read, so.
Okay. So
don't go through them all again.
Okay, so the Swansea Food Partnership is another aspect. We're supporting local food producers across Swansea with an emphasis on the rural side. So we're developing marketing for those and also funding avenues of which projects such as Avenues to Market could potentially support rural businesses, food businesses from primary, secondary and tertiary food producers. As you can see there, some of the outcomes and the activities so far which we've created. So we formed in September 2019. We've held an event with 34 buyers, 14 producers. We've responded in COVID by creating a takeaway and delivery supplier list and social media for supporting local food businesses with 1,060 followers on Instagram. And we've also just put in a funding application to Welsh Government under the supply chain fund for Avenues to Market, which will provide support to those producers previously done. And then final slide, that's my contact details.
Right, okay. Right, thanks for that. I got a couple of people actually indicating. Peter Black first.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Obviously, a lot of these projects are really important, and I think I actually visited the community food producers in London some years ago to see what was going on there, and I'm very impressed with it. The question really relates around the funding. A lot of this is European money. What happens now we're no longer in the European community?
Okay, so the next lot of funding is hopefully coming from the Prosperity Fund. Yeah. So hopefully that, and plus with...
Sorry, I didn't catch that then, sorry.
The Prosperity Fund, hopefully, fingers crossed.
The mythical Prosperity Fund.
Yes, that's the one.
Yeah. So basically the funding is just expired on this current thing. So are we bidding towards the Prosperity Fund?
No, the funding for RDP finishes from administration purposes in September 2023. We still have funding for our community projects to go through to February 2023.
And that includes European money, which we've already taken and we're not giving back.
Hopefully, yes, if I can spend it. I'm trying my hardest.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Peter Jones.
Yes, thank you, Chair. First of all, may I congratulate Vicky and her colleagues on what I found to be a very interesting, detailed and informative report across a very important area of policy in which I'm particularly interested. Some years ago, when working for the RSPB, I was involved with a LEADER project up on the Welsh uplands, looking at the management of sphagnum moss by blanket bog for carbon and water retention. And that was funded through the LEADER scheme, and very interesting. I got very wet, it was raining at the time, but nevertheless very interesting and enjoyable. The LEADER project, as I understand it in its present form, is due to finish, or in fact had presumably finished as of 2020. And presumably we're not eligible for any further funding under that or any successor scheme other than the one that you just mentioned in terms of possible partnership funding. But presumably the funding for LEADER projects that you show in one of the slides, this appears, what, 281,000 or thereabouts, still waiting to be spent. We are still able to spend that, I assume.
We are still able to spend that. The original date for completion was 2020 for RDP LEADER programme. However, that has been extended, which enabled us to reprofile, which then gives us the spend which is remaining to be completed by February 2023 for projects, and administration, which is not in the 281,000, to be spent by September 2023.
Yes, thank you. Just a couple of observations as well. I hope you won't take this as a criticism.
Go on.
I rather thought that putting a dairy cow on the front of the presentation was perhaps not the most sustainable form of presenting Welsh agriculture. I mean, we all know the contribution that livestock farming makes to global carbon emissions, and I'd have thought a more arable scene might have been more appropriate, but that's just a silly quibble, and I'm not going to pursue that in any way.
It's a free-range cow, Peter.
That's fine.
It's a free-range cow.
Well, yes,
it's regenerative farming. Regenerative farming, and it's regenerate. So I thought it was quite apt.
I won't argue with you, Vicky. I mean, it's just a silly observation on my part, although there is a serious undertone to the observation. I was interested that the measured global hectare consumption for Swansea was 3.25, which actually is quite low, believe it or not, compared to, I think, the UK overall figure, which I seem to remember from my RSPB days, this was a few years ago, was more like 5 or thereabouts. And of course, the United States, believe it or not, goes up to something like 9. So we're not quite as unsustainable in Swansea as some other parts of the planet might be. I wonder just two things. One, the local action group for that includes voluntary sector representation. I just wondered quite which organisations are represented on the LAG under that heading. You may not be able to answer that now, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I can. So we have Swansea Rural Voice, SCVS, so the voluntary service in Swansea. We've also got Wales Cooperative. We've just had a change. There was Coedfarc community group in Pontoons, apologies for the pronunciation. And then we do have a few community members as well, which gives an overview throughout the whole of our rural communities, as opposed to just one person. There's a number in different areas, different rural wards.
Yeah. Okay, but so but no representation from bodies like the wildlife trusts, or dare I mention the RSPB, which I thought might have been interested in this context?
Not at present. We do have an open call for members particularly from the voluntary sector and from the private sector. So we could target those in our next round, which is due to be advertised this week, actually. So I'll note those and try and make contact. And maybe if I could contact you for specific contacts.
Well, yes, I was just going to offer to try and put some pressure on my former RSPB colleagues to engage themselves with what I think is a very important and interesting process. Thank you. And then the final thing, under food strategy, if I may, or the Swansea Food Partnership, well, precisely that point. Is there a food strategy? I mean, on the one hand, well, I'm sure there is, but in the sense local doesn't necessarily equal sustainable. I'm sure you appreciate that. I mean, I'm speaking as a vegetarian, and I just wonder to what extent, in terms of developing what I'll call a food strategy, the partnership takes account of the need to, let's face it, encourage less meat consumption in line with global advice in terms of combating climate change and cutting carbon emissions. That's a big one as well. So I'd welcome your thoughts on that too. Thank you.
Thank you. So yeah, as I reported on the slides, we're still in our infancy. So trying to get private sector people to commit to forming a food strategy hasn't quite happened as yet. It's something which we'd work towards. I note your importance of the reduction of meat consumption for a climate, response and carbon reduction. However, I would say we'd need to incorporate the full farming sector and needs into consideration, and talk about maybe regenerative farming and purchasing of quality and locally produced meats, as opposed to those which are from a wider intensive farming industry.
Okay, I'll leave it at this point, Chair, because I'm sure others want to come in.
Yes, yes, they definitely do, Peter. Yeah. Right, Will.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report. It's very interesting. A good list of very good projects there. Pennard, I think, is very worthwhile. I'm sure Linda would agree. Very much needed down there. The question I've got really is the bike off-road sort of cycle network. This came out of a Scrutiny tourism group working group, sorry, that we did a few years ago, and it was brought up at that. And Chris Dale from what coastal or what groups here in
Access.
That's the one. Thank you very much.
Am I in as a guest?
Yeah.
Yes,
Chris Dale had actually done quite a lot of work on this behind the scenes, it turned out, so which was really handy. I know he's been sorry, Chair, someone else is I can't quite hear myself. Yeah, so basically I was just wondering what the plan was with the rural cycling network, how big it's going to be, and what that looks like. I mean, I think it's got real potential to be a good tourist driver. I think if people could hire bikes, for example, from somewhere like Park Mill and access different parts of Gower on even these electric mountain bikes, that would be, fantastic. Or whether that we can link Gower up via a cycling network again through sort of from Kittle through to Pennard Southgate eventually, and then link Gower up with Swansea basically on an off-road network. So just wondering if you could give us a bit more detail on that and timescales, please.
Okay, so the original application which was put in was to consider a larger cycle route which spanned two particular areas. I think it was north and south of Gower. However, since it was approved, there's been difficulties with permissions being withdrawn from a landowner and community groups which have objected. So in order to enable, this was just slightly before COVID, so in order to roll the programme out, the route was slightly reduced. But then COVID hit, and we weren't able to roll out the programme. Chris has been in dialogue with the team on a regular basis, and we thought there would be more movement at the end of summer, and that work would be able to do, but then we got put back into the restrictions, and now we're at a point where we think it's going to start in September, and then it will be completed, I think, by the end of the summer, all being well with COVID. In terms of linking in further activities, such as you mentioned with the hiring of bikes and joining up further cycle routes, that I'd need to go back to Chris really and have another discussion with him and find out what those plans are. Is that okay?
Yeah. I mean that's fine. I was expecting an answer on those along those lines. But yeah, I mean, I know funding's tight, obviously. But what I'm trying to get across really is this could be really, really good. I think we've got electric bikes now with the electric mountain bike hire from a central point in Gower. Mm-hmm. I think would be well used. So yeah. I think it's a worthwhile project. It just probably costs a lot more than we've got allocated towards it at the moment, I imagine.
Yes, that doesn't mean to say that we couldn't assist Chris with looking at funding options for that. There's green recovery expressions of interest coming up as well. So
yeah, I think a central point in Gower, such as Park Mill, with electric bike hire, mountain bike hire, would be fantastic for tourism in the area.
Yeah, I'll certainly go back to Chris and update you.
Okay, thanks for that. Wendy Fitzgerald.
Sorry, I thought my hand was down. I was asking about the funding, but that's already been asked.
Okay. Chris Ollie.
Yeah, can I ask, is there any link between the rural development plans in other parts of South West Wales? I think of Carmarthen and Pembroke, because of the regional aspect of the growth of the food industry and the cut down on miles traveled, food miles. So is there any link up between any of them?
In terms of RDP officers meeting, we meet every 6 weeks with the regional teams, which is the southwest team. So there's about 6 or 7. So it runs from Neath Talbot right up to the very top of Wales. And we do share best practice within those meetings. We also have a cooperation project which is being delivered presently through RDP, which has got, I think, 7 different local authorities, and that's looking at grazing practices, common grazing practices, which again, that has an effect on our food systems and that. But with the food partnership, we certainly would look to link in with other areas for best practice and shared resources and possible projects to be delivered. Obviously, that's funding dependent, which Swansea Food Partnership has none.
Okay, Paxton.
Thank you, Chairman. I think Vicky has covered things very well in that sense, so the report is quite comprehensive. I think Will has just identified another opportunity for himself to invest in Gower in that sense, but that's basically a lot of the policy behind the RDP is to find those sort of businesses that want to invest but need that sort of starter funding to get up and running. Obviously they have to match fund to show their commitment as well, but that's the whole purpose behind it, and basically anything of that nature is what we're looking to support by and large. We have recently, as Vicky has said, introduced the One Planet concept to ensure that we are looking or hopefully identifying projects that are going to make some contribution to that. Mightn't be that great, but we would hope they would be contributing to that rather than making the position worse, and that's something that we'd be looking at when we're doing those assessments. I think that's fair. Vicky, is there anything else I need to add?
No, you're doing a sterling job there, Paxton.
Right, okay. Well, Vicky, thanks for that. It was a very clear report.
Jeff, I've got my hand up as well. I don't know whether
Oh,
it's...
sorry, you just put it up. Yeah, go on then, Susan.
I have two questions, really. One is regarding the cockle gatherers of Penclawdd and the problems that they've been having recently, not just with COVID, but with the train disaster as well. And I wondered if you'd had any help for them, because I know they are struggling at the minute. That was one question. The second one was regarding the cycling in Gower. I know the railways are very keen on linking up with some of the footpaths, and we've talked about hiring bikes at Gowerton train station in order to access North Gower. And there's a lady that I'm hoping to meet in the near future looking at the footpaths in this area and to link it all in. So just really to put that to you, that it's not just down in Pennard, there's North Gower that really needs some help as well.
I take you and note your point on North Gower. It is a focus which we do try to bring out in our applications and for our applicants to be from those areas, not necessarily discounting other areas because it's an open process. But yes, we are aware that North Gower sometimes is forgotten slightly. In terms of the cockle gatherers, I have reached out to them through Swansea Food Partnership, but I've had no response to them from them. So I'd be interested maybe in pursuing that again to see if they do what they need, if the food business grant, which is available through Welsh Government, might be of assistance, because that's just due to be opened in the next couple of weeks. So I'll follow that up.
Okay, well, Phil Downing and myself were in a meeting this week with Nia Griffiths regarding the train disaster, and there are people there that are really concerned about the lack of support for the cockle gatherers.
Okay, I'll look into that for you.
Thanks for that. Right, if there are no more questions, thanks very much, Vicky. As I said, it was a very good and clear report. I certainly learned a lot from it. Okay, if you want to leave now, we've just got a couple of other items actually on the agenda. The next one is letters. I think we've actually covered quite a lot really from the letters already at the start of the meeting. I think, Emily, you've got a few points that we want answers to and so on. The next meeting is, it says Tuesday the 2nd of March on the agenda, but we've actually got an additional meeting on the 25th of January, which is going to be a closed meeting, which is the arena contract. I have asked for sight of the contract, for all of us to actually see the contract prior, at least 2 days before the meeting, so we can read and absorb. And we'll chase that up this week now to see when they're actually going to give us sight of it. Okay, I'll bring the meeting to a close now.
Councillor Jones, could I just add, for the purpose of the recording, please, that there were no public questions today?
No public questions, thanks for that, Vicky, yeah.
Jeff, can I just ask as well, we were looking at doing a virtual visit to the arena. I can't remember the drones. Is that?
Yes, I think that was actually in the reply in the letters actually, that they were going to give a short presentation today, and it's actually slipped my mind. But if we can do that, Emily, to remind them to actually perhaps do it.
Absolutely, I'll chase that up for you.
Yeah. Okay.
And Emily, could I have the details of Vicky so that I can put somebody from the railway service through to her for her to negotiate with them on cycling?
Certainly, of course, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, there we are then. See you, bye-bye. I'm going. I haven't had a cup of coffee yet.